Hi everyone, and welcome to the Inspired Business Media channel. Today I'm joined by Nada Ahmed, the Vice President of Transformation at Aker Solutions. Hi Nada, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, pleasure to be here with you today.
So let's start at the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about your transformation background and how you got to where you are today?
Yes, of course, I'd love to. So yeah, I mean, transformation background. It takes me. I'm from Pakistan. I grew up there, and then since then I have lived in many different places. And I feel like transformation. It's a loaded word. What does it mean? But I think my life has been a series of transformation. So it's adapting to change, adapting to new environments, and also, since I was a kid, like growing up in a country like Pakistan, I was always challenging the status quo, especially as a woman, on so many limitations that are imposed on women in that part of the world. So I always questioned and spoke up about that, and I think that throughout my career has accentuated in some way. And whatever I do is I ask questions and I challenge the status quo. And I think in some sense, that's why I have succeeded so well in driving transformation around across different companies. And maybe to go a little bit deeper into it, I early on in my career, I decided something that I really felt passionate about was the environment. So that was a field that I chose. I did my master's in environmental analysis, and I really wanted to work in the energy industry. I was in Houston, Texas at that time. And I really wanted to work with the industry, in the industry, to see how we could drive change. And so that's got me into the field of energy. I was working with carbon capture and storage, which has had its different waves, and now it's really back on the agenda of a lot of the governments again. But around 2014, when there was a downturn, I was working for a Norwegian company, and we decided to close down our unit on carbon capture and storage. And that's where as a company, as we were transitioning and as we were looking at the disruptive forces all around us because of the digital transformation, I got the opportunity to lead the digital transformation of the company where I was at. That's DNV. And that was really an exciting moment for me, as it was a field that was very different. But I was very curious to learn, and I could see very early on how it's going to really be a driving force for change in our industry. So I quickly got up to speed. I joined a lot of sort of startup accelerators, startup weekend clubs in Oslo, and really tried to understand what's going on within tech, how we can bring a lot of that into corporate, and how do we need to transform our culture in corporate so that we are more adaptive, so that we can take on these new technologies and keep up with this very competitive environment that we were seeing. So that's really how I got into sort of digitalization, innovation, and currently, in Aker Solutions, where I'm at, we are, at the center of the energy transition. I have a very ambitious goal to be 2/3 renewables by 2030, and that's a big jump for us to go from where we are today to where we want to be. And we see a lot of our customers are also driving hard the net zero agenda for 2050. So there's, So I'm really excited to be part of it, part of this journey, and see how like the experience I have transforming sort of personally in my life, and also sort of bringing it to work, and see how we can actually drive society into this new era.
Amazing. It sounds like there's kind of a lot of change on the horizon, and you seem to be a big part of that. And that's led me nicely on to my second question. So I know you're very productive in your industry. For example, you're currently serving as the board director at Grieg Maritime Group. You're also the head of the board of the Polytechnical Societal Digital Leadership Community. And I've also seen you do regular live events on LinkedIn. So why don't you tell us a bit more about this?
Yes, no, I'd be happy to. So, I mean, I was lucky that earlier this year I got the opportunity to serve on the board of Great Maritime Group, which is a really historic and prominent shipping company that creates a lot of, started off as a ship owner, a ship management firm, but now creating a lot of innovative maritime solutions for the maritime industry. And to be able to sit on the board where decisions are made, I think that's again been a very transformative experience for me, coming from an operational background, more of a background in which you're reporting to the board, you're presenting the strategy to the board, and now the tables have turned, and now the leadership, like the CEO, is reporting to you. So that was it's a steep learning curve, because then suddenly you have to get up to speed with what's going on in the industry, how's the company doing financially, and try to come up with interesting insights and important advice that you can give to the leadership team, because they're depending on you. So I believe that we need more diverse voices in the boardroom. And in many places, in Norway, it's different, a country where I'm living at the moment, it's mandated that if you're listed on the stock exchange, you need 40% women on boards. And in a lot of other countries, you don't have that, right? If you go to countries like the US, 20% board membership are maybe women, right? If you're lucky. And there are lots of boards that are still predominantly male dominated. So for me to also be on there as sort of representing this diverse voice, and that was really why I was invited into that board, is as this company is now looking to transform, as this industry is looking to transform, they need new, diverse, fresh perspectives to challenge them and disrupt some of the linear thinking, some of the conventional thinking that they have. So in that sense, it really opened up my eyes into the amount of influence you can have being on the board, and why we need more women, more diversity on boards, and how we can actually make that happen. Because you also getting a position on the board is not easy. It's very exclusive, so it's really reserved for people who have a lot of experience, have traditionally served on a board. And that's where a lot of minorities and women actually fall off, because predominantly a lot of these board positions are held by men. So I mean, of course, that experience has been good, but it's also made me realize how important it is that we are sitting on the table where important decisions are made. And in terms of, the other stuff that I'm involved in, the Polytechnical Society here in Oslo, and that's really for me an arena to learn and get inspired, as there's so much happening at the moment within digitalizations, technologies that are coming and disrupting the way that we work. Now with the pandemic, also learning how to work more remotely, and there's been a rapid uptake of digital technologies. So creating these arenas where we can bring leaders together and discuss some of the societal challenges that we're facing and learn from one another. And really the ambition there is how Norway can be a leader within digitalization and solve some of these challenges. And in terms of the live feeds that I do, I think that's something that I've just started experimenting with. And for me, it's just a way of learning, engaging with the audience, and connecting with people, especially I think after a long, more than a year of being in the pandemic, not being able to go to a lot of events. I have actually spent a lot of time reading and learning about what's going on in the industry. So now I thought, well, maybe this is a good way for me to try to articulate what I've learned, and make sense of it myself, and also get input from those who are following me on LinkedIn, for example. And for me, one of my ambitions is to also be a better public speaker. So I thought, why not just go on LinkedIn and experiment a little bit?
Amazing. It's great that you kind of use the platform that you have, as you said, to reach out to the others in your network, get insights, and also kind of educate where you can as well. So I know you've spoken a little bit about diversity and inclusion. So what advice do you have in regards to building a diverse and high-performing team?
Yeah, a very good question, and a question that I have been thinking a lot about as I had to build my own team for leading transformation, and have been reading for many years on the work that's being done in many corporations and also in academia on what does it take to build sort of what's the perfect recipe for a team that will really be high performing and succeed. And sort of a lot of research reinforces that the number one important element of a successful team is psychological safety. It's how you can make your team members feel safe. And a lot of that, I believe, comes with trust. So how do you actually invest in learning about your team members, invest time socializing with them and really getting to know them, building trust, and trust you build over time. And psychological safety, what it means is that not only you trust your team members, but you also feel safe in a way that if you can experiment, that if you make a mistake, you're not going to be penalized, that they're not going to be like dire consequences and you're not going to lose your job. So how can you create an environment where failure is tolerated? And you're allowed to take risks, you're allowed to experiment, and you're in a safe environment, you're among team members where you can say something and be wrong and it's okay, right? And if you don't have psychological safety, that's where you get linear thinking and you really can't make these big leaps and come up with new ideas. And the second most important element, one is building trust. And the second is giving everyone the opportunity to speak up, and not have one or two very dominant voices in the room. So often when you have a team, very easily you see one or two people sort of taking over the space. They will own the dialogue. They will end up making most of the decisions. So whenever I've led a team, I try to make sure that we're getting inputs from every single member and they're contributing equal amount. And there was a really famous experiment they did in Google, and they were really trying to understand what are the elements of a team that has psychological safety. And that's what they found out: teams where everyone was contributing the same amount and there was not sort of one or two dominant voices. And then it's really up to you as a leader to create that atmosphere and role model that. So not be the only one making decisions, but actually defer to others. See if someone's been really quiet in the meeting, ask them for their perspective, because they've been present, they've been observing, they're seeing things maybe other people are not, who've been like dominating the discussion. And that's really where the real insights come in, is when you can, everyone can speak up. And maybe a third element I would mention, since that we're talking about this, is then also creating a room where contrarian thoughts are tolerated. So it's okay to disagree. So when people are allowed to speak up and voice their own opinion that might go against the status quo, might go against the conventional wisdom, might go against what the predominant point of view is, allowing those kind of discussions to take place, creating a space where you're actually having these intelligent discussions and challenging one another, and not taking it personally and not taking it as a conflict, but really taking it as the purpose here is so that we can achieve our goal and move forward and advance.
I really love that. I love what you said about kind of not being afraid to make mistakes, because I think one thing the pandemic maybe has taught us is that people are going to make mistakes, but it's kind of how you deal with that and move on from it. So yeah, amazing to hear that from you. So that being said, how important is it to get the work culture right in a bigger corporation, do you think?
I think it's extremely important, because they say strategy eats culture for breakfast. I think it was Peter Drucker who said that. So you're not going to succeed in meeting your strategic objectives if you don't have a good culture in place to meet your strategic objectives, where people do not feel aligned with our ambitions, with your vision. So how are you communicating your vision with the people? Do the people feel connected with the vision of the company? Are they driven? Do they buy into it? So culture is really, underlying force that will propel you forward to actually achieving your ambitions. And here, like a culture that I really work towards promoting is, I call it agile leadership, really bringing it from Silicon Valley, how we do agile software development, but translating it towards leadership, how as a leader you demonstrate humility, knowing that you can make mistakes and you are always learning and adapting. And also, agile leadership is about empowering your employees to make decisions. So not thinking because you're leading the team or because you have a specific title that you have to make all the decisions. But in fact, surrounding yourself with people who know more than you or know different aspects of the business than you do. And there, if you're still going on and making all the decisions, then you're bound to fail. So how can you actually take advantage of the diversity that you have if you're building a diverse team and get them involved in the decision-making process, empower them instead of trying to control them? And I think that's where we're moving towards this new era of, humanocracy, a term coined by Gary Hamel, a researcher at Harvard University, and he talks about how the old way of working, command and control, bureaucracy, which really slows us down, was made in the Industrial Revolution era. But now we're entering Industry 4.0, automation, AI. We really need to bring out the strengths of the human brain, the human intelligence, our emotional intelligence, and really empowering humans instead of having them just be a cog in the machine.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you really kind of try to lead by example. So like you said, with people being afraid to make mistakes, you also say kind of, I might mess up, I might do something wrong, but we're all human, and I'm going to lead by example and show you that it's absolutely fine to do that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's been one of my sort of biggest learning, is that not trying to go out there and be perfect. So often when I'm leading teams, there are people who have 10, 20 years more experience than me. So having that humility that, there's a lot more that other people know and have experience in, but still daring to go out there and trying out new things, knowing that you would fail and sometimes you might be wrong, and being okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And another way of role modeling that is also to ask for feedback. So that's something that I really tried to implement in my team, was how we could have a 360 degree feedback loop where, not only I was, as a leader, I'm not the only one entitled to give feedback, but the team should also feel comfortable giving me feedback on how we could work better as a team and how I could show up better as a leader.
Mm-hmm. Well, that being said, I really wanted to congratulate you for being on the 2020 list of top 50 women in technology in Norway. How did it feel to be recognized in this way?
It felt really good. I mean, it came as a surprise. So this award is done as sort of a nomination. Someone nominates you, and then there's a jury that sits and selects people. And it really came as a surprise, but at the same time, it really felt good to be recognized. And the fact that we're choosing 50 women all across Norway and recognizing them for their work in tech, it's a way of trying to also role model and promote so that more women can enter the field of STEM. We know we need more women. This is the future. And we need to make sure that women are part of it and that they're part of designing the future. So it felt really good to be appreciated. And I've spent actually a lot of time recently thinking about how do you actually accept the appreciation and the recognition that you get. I think sometimes as women we're taught to be too humble, but it's part of really practicing gratitude. It comes from really, if someone does recognize you, if you do get an award, just really sitting in that gratefulness, in that gratitude, because that then in turn gives me more energy, gives me more drive, and reinforces the passion that I have, the motivation that I have on the work that I'm doing.
Mhm.
So I've really started thinking differently about gratitude and appreciation of when I get awards like these, is how do you just sit with it and sit with the energy and let it be the force that drives you forward.
Well, I think it's amazing, and as I said, well done. You should be really, really proud.
Thank you.
I know you spoke a little bit about kind of women in tech and STEM careers. So what kind of advice would you give to women looking to get into the same industry as you?
Yeah, no, this is something, again, I feel very passionately about, and I've mentioned it before too. I think it's really important for women to not give up and continuing being themselves. I do believe the work environment, especially in tech, still has a long way to go to create a space that's more accommodating for women. There is work to be done, but I think it's our generation of women who are going to continue to push back, continue to say that there's a different way of leading. And we need to be more open to the different values that are out there, the different spectrum of values, right? So we need to make a room for empathy. We need to make room for inclusiveness, for collaboration, for compassion, because it's this whole spectrum of values that we have, that both masculine and feminine values we need to drive us forward. So not conform too much to the structure and maybe the male-dominated work environment, but have faith in your own unique abilities and really try to strengthen them and focus on them and show up with confidence.
I love what you said there. Definitely, I think people are starting to realize now that there's definitely kind of more values and qualities that leaders can and should have, which include women a lot more than they have in the past. So have you got any exciting projects coming up at Aker Solutions?
Yes, we're always working on exciting work at Aker Solutions. I'm lucky to work at an engineering company that's always building, new solutions, technological solutions for the future. And currently we are transitioning, as I said, we have an ambitious goal of being 2/3 of our revenue coming from renewables by 2030. So one of our exciting projects is how do we transition this engineering muscle that we have built up from traditional oil and gas into serving renewable industry, into serving offshore wind, into serving hydrogen, and sort of other industries that are going to help us meet our targets.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really important now, kind of everyone's kind of goals and sights are set on the more renewable and sustainable energies, like you said, and everyone's definitely kind of a lot more conscious about what they're doing and why they should be doing it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So can you tell me how COVID has impacted your industry and what you've done to overcome this?
Yeah, no, so the COVID has definitely impacted the energy industry quite adversely. A lot of our work offshore, for example, had to be done remotely. So in some way, it really helped us push digitalization forward. And we had these visions to create remote operations. And the pandemic really forced us to bring those roadmaps forward and implement it in real time. So we were able to capture these learnings and able to really speed up and accelerate our digital transformation in general. At the same time, of course, a lot of our operations were also disrupted. It also became clear to us that we need to transition to create a more sustainable business, sustainable in all terms, right? Sustainable in terms of economic value, but also sustainable in terms of our impact on societies and on the environment. So it has allowed us to pause a little bit and reflect a little bit more deeply on what are our values and what are going to be our strategic ambitions going forward. So I think a lot of the industry has gotten some time to think a little bit differently. The pandemic has shown us things can be done differently. We can work remotely, and that even some of the biggest challenges, we'll find a way to resolve them, right? How quickly we were able to come up with a vaccine and vaccinate a majority of our population. I think it's also a good learning for us that the humanity is able to solve some of the biggest, most complex challenges if we put our mind to it. So I think it strengthens our resolve to solve the climate change challenge that's in front of us now.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I think, as you said, we've all been so resilient and almost kind of surprised ourselves at how resilient we've been and how we've had to adapt, but also not everything has been negative that's come out of the pandemic. Like you said, kind of working from home, hybrid working, it's all kind of been accelerated, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, I was just going to agree with you. Absolutely. I agree. Yeah. Resilience and adaptability. I think that's really core to our essence as human beings. And that's something that I really think we're going to need into a world that's going to be more disruptive going forward.
Mm-hmm. So lastly, I wanted to know, what do you think is next for your industry?
So I think what's next, as I said, is this energy transition. How are we able to adapt our current strengths to potentially a new industry, which is also still serving the energy needs of the world, but in a more sustainable way. And secondly, it's the digital transformation. How quickly are we able to adapt to the new technologies and make use of data? So I think, when we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning, we've seen a lot of advances made from some of the tech companies like Apple, Google, Facebook, and how they're using data. But in terms of autonomous AI, in terms of Industry 4.0, Internet of Things, there's still a lot more to come. And we're still at the infancy of really learning how we're going to connect the physical world with the digital world, and how we're really going to be able to use data to perform better and optimize our operations. So I think that's what's next, is a big transition for us in terms of our focus, how we produce energy that's more CO2 efficient and less detrimental to our environment. And secondly, how we take advantage of the digital transformation.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for speaking to me today, Nada. I think your insights are really amazing and I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Same here. Really enjoyed talking to you, Lauren.
Thank you.